There is a pain that many people never speak out loud. It is the pain of loving someone and suddenly not recognizing yourself anymore. One unanswered message can shake your peace. One cold look can make your whole day collapse. One small change in another person can awaken fear, anger, jealousy, doubt, and a loneliness so deep that it feels older than this life. And then the heart asks a desperate question. Why does love, which begins so beautifully, so often become the place where we suffer the most? What if the deepest purpose of love is not to complete you, not to prove your worth, and not to guarantee that another person will stay forever? What if love, when seen through the light of the Buddha's teaching, is a mirror that reveals the mind? What if every attachment, every wave of longing, every moment of hurt, every tremble of fear is quietly showing you where craving hides, where clinging tightens, where old wounds still seek shelter, and where wisdom has not yet fully awakened? Many people spend years asking, "Did I meet the right person?" But the wiser question may be, what is this relationship showing me about my own heart? Many people ask, why did they hurt me? But another question may open a deeper door. What inside me is being touched? And how can I meet it without hatred, without blame, and without becoming smaller than my own truth? The Buddha did not teach that all pain in relationships is simply our imagination. He did not say that harmful speech becomes harmless just because we meditate. He did not ask us to excuse betrayal, disrespect, or cruelty. The Buddha taught something more honest and more liberating. He showed that suffering arises through causes and conditions. He showed that contact gives rise to feeling. Feeling can lead to craving. Craving can harden into clinging. And clinging gives birth to sorrow, lamentation, grief, and despair. He taught that what hurts us is not only what happens outside, but also the way the mind grasps, resists, imagines, and builds a self around what is happening. This is why love can become a path of awakening. Not because love is always sweet, not because another person will heal every wound, not because fate has chosen a perfect soul for us, but because in love, the mind becomes visible. In love, our hidden hunger comes to the surface. In love, our unhealed fear of loss, our secret wish to control, our pride, our dependence, our longing to be seen, and our habit of building identity around another person all begin to speak very loudly. And if we are courageous enough to listen with wisdom, then even heartbreak can become a teacher. Even longing can become a bell of mindfulness. Even disappointment can become a doorway. Even the end of a relationship can become the beginning of self-understanding. A young woman once sat alone in her room, holding a phone in her hand. She had read the last message from the man she loved at least 20 times. It was not cruel. It was not dramatic. It simply felt distant. A few hours passed, then a full day, then another. She could not eat properly. She could not focus. She kept checking the screen as if the next message would decide whether she was lovable or not. On the second night, she whispered to herself, "Why am I like this? Why does silence hurt so much?" When she finally spoke to an elder nun, the nun did not ask first about the man. She asked about the pain. "Where do you feel it in the body?" the nun said. The woman placed her hand on her chest. "It feels tight here." The nun nodded. "And what thought keeps returning?" The woman lowered her eyes. "That I am not important. that I will be left, that I am never enough. Then the nun said something simple, but it changed her life. The message did not create all this pain by itself. The silence touched a place that was already crying inside you. Do not hate the one who touched it. Learn to understand the wound that answered. This is the kind of wisdom that turns love into practice. Instead of making another person the sole cause of all suffering, we begin to see the web of conditions. Their silence may be unskillful. Their distance may be real. Their care may be weak. But the flood that rises inside us also reveals something unfinished in the heart. If we only chase them, accuse them, or collapse into self-pity, we learn nothing. But if we sit still long enough to ask, what fear is speaking now? What story is the mind repeating? What am I demanding from love that no human being can safely carry for me? Then the path opens. Welcome to Buddha, Peaceful Mind. If these reflections help you breathe a little more gently and see your own heart a little more clearly, stay with this teaching until the end. And if you feel moved, you may quietly support this space with a like and subscribe, so more people who suffer in silence can find a place of calm reflection. Let us begin with a truth that many hearts resist. Love does not exist to protect us from impermanence. It reveals impermanence. The person you adore will change. You will change. Emotions will rise and pass. Closeness will have seasons. Attraction will move like weather. Expectations will bloom and fade. Even the most beautiful relationship in the world is not exempt from change. If we demand that love remain exactly as it was at the beginning, we are asking life to stand still. And life has never promised that. This is why the Buddha's teaching on impermanence matters deeply in love. When we cling to the first sweetness, we suffer. When we cling to promises as if they guarantee the future, we suffer. When we cling to being chosen, being praised, being constantly reassured, being the center of another person's world, we suffer. And when change arrives, as it always does, the mind says something painful. This should not be happening. But the wise heart says, this too is part of being human. Would you choose a love that gives you constant comfort but leaves you asleep inside? Or a love that awakens truth, even if it asks you to grow? Hold that question gently in your heart as we walk together through this teaching. There is another misunderstanding that quietly destroys many relationships. People often believe that if a feeling is strong, it must be true. If longing is strong, it must be love. If jealousy is strong, it must be devotion. If pain is strong, it must mean the relationship is deep. But the Buddha never measured truth by intensity. He taught us to examine whether a state of mind leads to peace or suffering, clarity or confusion, compassion or harm. A mind can be very intense and still be deeply deluded. A craving can be powerful and still not be love. A bond can feel irresistible and still be unhealthy. A person can occupy your thoughts every hour of the day and still not be good for your heart, your dignity, or your path. This is why mindfulness matters. Mindfulness pauses the rush of reaction and asks, what is happening here really? Is this tenderness, or is it fear of being alone? Is this care, or is it control? Is this loyalty, or is it inability to let go? Is this patience, or is it self-abandonment? Is this forgiveness, or is it a refusal to see harm clearly? Once, a man came to a teacher and said, "I love her so much that I cannot sleep. If she smiles at me, I feel alive. If she speaks to another man, I burn inside. If she leaves, I will die." The teacher listened and said, "My friend, that is not the peace of love. That is the fire of clinging. You do not yet love her. You are trying to use her to escape yourself." The man felt insulted, but he stayed. Weeks later, he returned and said, "I think you were right. When I am honest, I do not really want to know her. I want her to remove my emptiness. I want her to tell me I matter. I want her to promise she will never leave." The teacher nodded with kindness. "Then your path is clear," he said. "Do not begin by asking whether she loves you. Begin by learning how to sit with the emptiness you keep handing to another person." This may sound harsh, but it is mercy. We suffer because we expect another human being to perform a task no human being can complete. We ask them to silence our insecurity, heal our childhood wounds, protect us from impermanence, guarantee our future, and make us feel permanently whole. But the Buddha points us back to the source. The work of liberation begins in this very mind. That does not mean we must become cold, detached, or unable to love. It means that true love grows best in a heart that is not begging, a heart that knows how to stand, breathe, and remain present can love more gently. A heart that sees its own fear can stop turning love into demand. A heart that has tasted inner stability can stop turning closeness into possession. Let us look closely at what often happens in the first stage of romance. Another person appears, and the mind begins to weave a story. They are special. They understand me. They are different from everyone else. They will finally give me what I have been missing. This story may contain some truth, but it also contains projection. We are not only seeing them, we are seeing our hope, our hunger, our imagination, and our old unfinished longing. Then something changes. They become tired, busy, quiet, imperfect, human. They fail to match the fantasy that our mind built around them. This is where one of two paths appears. The first path is blame. You changed. You disappointed me. You ruined everything. The second path is wisdom. This is where illusion breaks and reality begins. Can I meet the real person in front of me without demanding that they carry my dream? To be clear, wisdom does not mean staying in relationships that are dishonest, abusive, or degrading. The Buddha's path is never a path of self-betrayal. Right understanding includes seeing what is harmful. Right action includes stepping away from what keeps feeding suffering. Right speech includes honest communication. Compassion must include oneself. A woman once said to a monk, "I am trying to be spiritual, so I keep forgiving him. He lies, disappears for days, insults me, and returns only when he feels lonely. I tell myself I should not be attached, so I let it continue." The monk answered gently, "Non-attachment is not the same as having no boundaries. Wisdom does not ask you to remain where truth is repeatedly broken. To see clearly is part of the path. To leave harm is also part of the path. This is important for every heart listening. Sometimes love is a mirror that reveals our fear. Sometimes it is also a teacher that reveals another person's unhealed mind. We must be mature enough to hold both truths. Not all pain in relationship is created by our inner wound alone. Some pain is created by deception, disrespect, manipulation, or emotional laziness. Buddhism does not ask us to deny this. It asks us to see causes and conditions clearly, within and without. So when conflict appears, the wise question is not only, what inside me is hurting? It is also, what actions are happening here? Are they truthful? Are they kind? Are they responsible? Are they rooted in care, or are they rooted in craving and avoidance? The path of awakening is not blind softness. It is clear seeing. Another story may help. Two people were walking beside a river. One saw the water and said, "How beautiful." The other saw the same water and said, "How dangerous." The river had not changed. Only the minds were different. In the same way, a relationship can become a place of tenderness for one mind and a place of torment for another, depending on what each person brings into it. Fear turns uncertainty into panic. Pride turns correction into insult. Craving turns distance into catastrophe. Wisdom turns difficulty into understanding. This is why the Buddha's teaching does not begin with controlling the world. It begins with understanding the mind. The one who knows the movement of thought, feeling, craving, and clinging is less likely to drown in them. The one who watches jealousy as jealousy, fear as fear, and longing as longing already has a little freedom. The one who says, "Ah, this is the old wound speaking. This is the old self-image seeking reassurance. This is the old habit of demanding certainty," has stepped out of the dream for a moment. And sometimes, a single moment of seeing clearly can save years of suffering. A young man once became furious because the woman he loved forgot an important date. He raised his voice, accused her of not caring, and stormed out. Hours later, sitting alone, he remembered his father forgetting him again and again as a child. Birthday promises broken, school events missed, small moments of waiting that turned into lifelong pain. Suddenly he understood. Her forgetfulness hurt him, yes, but the explosion came from an older room in the heart. He was not only reacting to one day, he was reacting to many abandoned days. When he apologized later, he did not erase her mistake, and she did not erase his pain. But something changed because one of them became conscious. He said, "What I felt was real, but I also see that I brought an old wound into that moment. I do not want to keep punishing the present for what happened in the past." That was the beginning of a more mature love. This is one of the great benefits of honest relationship. It can reveal history hidden inside reaction. Love can uncover what therapy language might call wounds, and Buddhist language might call habits, tendencies, formations, and latent craving. However we name them, they live in the mind and appear when the right conditions come. Relationship becomes a field where these seeds sprout quickly. If we are unconscious, we simply repeat the pattern. If we are mindful, we begin to transform it. Do you most often react in love by chasing, by withdrawing, or by becoming angry? Or do you pause, breathe, and ask what the moment is trying to teach? There is no need to answer out loud. Just let the question be a lamp. One of the most liberating teachings of the Buddha is that no feeling lasts. This includes the sweetest joy and the sharpest grief. When we are infatuated, we think the glow will remain forever. When we are heartbroken, we think the darkness will never lift. Both are misunderstandings. Feeling is movement. Emotion is weather. The body trembles, the mind spins stories. Tears come, sleep goes, appetite changes. The world looks different. Yet even this changes. You may remember a heartbreak that once felt unbearable. At the time, perhaps you thought you would never laugh the same way again. But here you are, still breathing, still walking, still able to understand more deeply than before. This is impermanence not as theory, but as medicine. If you are listening with a wounded heart right now, hear this carefully. Your pain is real, but it is not permanent. Your grief deserves kindness, but it does not define your entire being. You are not only the one who was left, ignored, betrayed, or misunderstood. You are also the awareness that can know sorrow without becoming sorrow itself. This is where meditation enters the story of love. Meditation is not a way to stop caring. It is a way to care without drowning. It is a way to sit beside a burning feeling and say, I see you. I do not need to obey you. I do not need to build a whole identity out of you. I do not need to send the message I will regret. I do not need to destroy myself to prove I feel deeply. Sit with the body. Feel the ache in the chest. Notice the heat in the face, the hollowness in the stomach, the pressure in the throat. Name softly what is present. Fear is here. Longing is here. Anger is here. Shame is here. Do not say, I am fear, I am anger. Say, fear is here, anger is here. In that small shift, a little space appears. In that space, freedom begins. If this reflection is helping you, you may gently share it with someone who is suffering in love and does not yet know how to turn pain into understanding. Sometimes one quiet teaching arrives exactly when a heart is ready to soften. Let us go further. Many people say they want love, but often what they want is relief. Relief from loneliness, relief from self-doubt, relief from boredom, relief from the ache of not being chosen, relief from old grief. There is nothing shameful in wanting relief. We are human. But if we confuse relief with love, we bind ourselves to disappointment. True love includes warmth, but it also includes responsibility. It includes joy, but it also includes truth. It includes tenderness, but it also includes restraint. It includes closeness, but it also includes respect for the other person's humanity. Love becomes harmful when it tries to erase freedom. Love becomes heavy when it becomes ownership. Love becomes fear when it depends on constant proof. Imagine holding a small bird in your hands. If you squeeze too tightly, you injure it. If you hold it with panic, you cannot feel its delicate life. If you hold it with care, firmness, and space, it can breathe. The same is true of relationships. Many people do not lose love because they did not care enough. They lose it because fear made them grip it too hard. A teacher once told a student, "If you love a flower, do not crush it by demanding that it bloom according to your schedule. Water it, protect it when needed, give it sunlight, and respect its nature." The student asked, "But what if it withers anyway?" The teacher smiled sadly. "Then learn impermanence without bitterness. Not everything beautiful is meant to stay long. Some things come to teach gratitude, not possession." This is difficult for the heart, but it is liberating. When we release the idea that love must guarantee permanence, we can begin to appreciate presence. We stop measuring relationship only by whether it lasts forever. We ask instead, was there honesty? Was there kindness? Was there growth? Did I become more awake, more truthful, more compassionate, more grounded? If the answer is yes, then even a relationship that ended may still have been meaningful. Of course, there are times when love does last. There are relationships that deepen through years of change, illness, stress, misunderstanding, repair, and ordinary life. What keeps such love alive is rarely glamour. It is practice. It is patience. It is humility. It is the ability to say, I was wrong. It is the discipline of not speaking from every passing mood. It is the courage to remain kind, even when disappointment visits the room. An old couple was once asked how they stayed together for so many decades. The husband laughed and said, "We were not lucky every day. We were willing every day." The wife added, "In our youth, we thought love was a feeling. Later, we learned it was also a way of speaking, a way of listening, a way of not humiliating each other when tired or hurt. We learned that if one of us was burning, the other should not bring more fire." That is a profoundly Buddhist insight. When anger appears, do not feed it. When fear appears, do not worship it. When the mind demands immediate revenge, immediate certainty, immediate reassurance, do not kneel to it. Breathe. Wait. See clearly. Speak later if needed, but do not let the storm decide your actions. This does not mean suppression. It means skill. A pot of boiling water cannot reflect the moon. A disturbed mind cannot see relationship clearly. If you try to resolve every issue at the peak of emotional heat, you will often create new suffering. First, calm the body. Then examine the mind. Then speak what is true and beneficial. The Buddha taught right speech as speech that is truthful, timely, gentle, and beneficial. Imagine what would happen if lovers truly practiced this. Not perfectly, but sincerely. Fewer words would be thrown like knives. Fewer silences would be used as punishment. Fewer apologies would be delayed by pride. Fewer assumptions would be treated as facts. A great deal of relationship suffering comes not only from what happened, but from what the mind added afterward. One look becomes a whole story. One delay becomes rejection. One disagreement becomes proof that love is dying. This is what Buddhist psychology often points to so beautifully. Contact happens. Feeling arises. Then perception, interpretation, proliferation, and story-making begin. By the time we react, we are often reacting not to reality itself, but to a world we built in our mind. This is why mindfulness in relationships is not optional if you seek peace. You must learn to ask, what are the facts? What am I assuming? What does the body feel? What story is the mind creating? What am I afraid this means? That simple inquiry can prevent enormous suffering. Let us take a familiar example. Someone you love becomes quiet. The fact is, they are quiet. The mind immediately says, they are losing interest. I did something wrong. They are pulling away. I will be abandoned. Then the body tightens, fear rises, and you react from panic. Later you discover they were simply tired, worried about work, or distracted by family trouble. The suffering was real, but much of it came from proliferation. Now consider another example. Someone you love becomes quiet often, avoids communication, dismisses your feelings, and repeatedly disappears whenever closeness deepens. Here, mindfulness does not mean ignoring a pattern. It means seeing the pattern clearly without turning away. Wisdom sees both inner fear and outer reality. Wisdom does not confuse spiritual maturity with self-erasure. The path of love, then, is not to blame the other person for everything, nor to blame yourself for everything. It is to learn honest discernment. Honest discernment asks, what is mine to understand, heal, and release? And what is theirs to take responsibility for? Where am I reacting from the past? Where is real harm happening in the present? Where do I need more patience? Where do I need stronger boundaries? Where am I using spirituality to avoid grief? Where am I using blame to avoid looking inward? These questions are not always comfortable, but they make the heart wiser. There is a common fantasy that mature love means there will be no more insecurity, no more wounds, no more conflict. In truth, mature love means something different. It means that when insecurity arises, you know how to hold it. When wounds are touched, you know how to take responsibility for your side. When conflict appears, you do not immediately turn each other into enemies. When pain comes, you ask not only, why is this happening to me? But also, what is this teaching me about attachment, fear, expectation, and compassion? That shift changes everything. A woman once said after a painful breakup, I used to ask why he entered my life if he was not meant to stay. Now I ask what kind of person I became because he entered my life. I learned where I beg for reassurance. I learned how I silence myself to keep love. I learned how much of my identity depended on being wanted. I learned that I can survive losing someone and still not lose myself. Her eyes still carried sadness, but they also carried dignity. This is the kind of learning that suffering can offer when it is met with awareness. Buddhism does not romanticize heartbreak. Pain hurts. Loss aches. Tears are natural. Longing is human. But Buddhism also refuses to waste suffering. It asks us to look directly at what suffering is made of. It asks us to see how craving says, I need this person to be exactly as I want. How clinging says, if they leave, I become nothing. How becoming says, I am the rejected one, the unworthy one, the abandoned one. And how ignorance forgets that all these states are impermanent and not self. Not self does not mean you do not exist in any practical sense. It means that the identities we grip so tightly are constructed and changing. In relationships, this is deeply freeing. You are not forever the one who was cheated on. You are not forever the one who was not chosen. You are not forever the anxious partner, the jealous lover, the abandoned child, the angry one. These patterns may be strong, but they are not your eternal essence. They are conditioned states that can be known, softened, and transformed. This is why the Buddha's path brings hope. If suffering is conditioned, it can be changed. If jealousy is conditioned, it can be understood. If fear of abandonment is conditioned, it can be met with compassion and wisdom. If clinging is conditioned, it can be loosened. One very practical way to begin is to stop making every feeling into a command. Feeling lonely does not mean you should run back to someone who repeatedly harms you. Feeling jealous does not mean you should interrogate or control. Feeling panic does not mean the relationship is doomed. Feeling rejected does not mean you are without value. A feeling is real as an experience, but not every feeling tells the truth. The mind under emotional pressure often becomes a poor storyteller. It edits facts. It exaggerates danger. It selects evidence that supports fear. It speaks in extremes. They never care. I always get left. Nobody truly loves me. It will never get better. This is why mindful breathing and reflective distance are so important. They interrupt the authority of panic. Try this the next time your heart is storming. Sit down. Put one hand on the belly and one hand on the chest. Breathe in slowly and know you are breathing in. Breathe out slowly and know you are breathing out. Then say softly, "A painful feeling is here. I do not need to become this feeling. I can witness it. I can care for it. I can wait before speaking. I can wait before deciding. I can wait before believing every thought." Even 30 seconds of this can change the destiny of a conversation. At some point, every serious relationship invites us to examine the difference between love and attachment. Love says, "May you be well." Attachment says, "You must behave in a certain way so I can be okay." Love says, "I care for your freedom and dignity." Attachment says, "I need you to act according to my fear." Love says, "I will be honest." Attachment says, "I will manipulate to feel safe." Love softens the self. Attachment inflates or panics the self. But do not make the mistake of thinking attachment disappears overnight. Most people begin with a mix. There is tenderness and there is fear. There is sincerity and there is craving. There is generosity and there is self-concern. Practice is the work of increasing what is wholesome and understanding what is not. How do we increase what is wholesome in love? By cultivating the qualities the Buddha praised again and again. Loving kindness instead of domination. Compassion instead of contempt. Mudita. Joyful appreciation instead of envy and competition. Equanimity instead of desperate control. Truthfulness instead of image management. Restraint instead of emotional violence. Generosity instead of scorekeeping. Patience instead of impulsive retaliation. Clear comprehension instead of fantasy. These are not abstract virtues. They are daily practices. They show up when your partner forgets something important. They show up when you are tempted to check their phone. They show up when you want to punish with silence. They show up when your pride wants to win rather than understand. They show up when you are tired and still choose not to speak cruelly. Let us pause with another small story. A couple used to argue about everything: money, time, family, chores, messages, plans, forgetfulness, tone of voice. One day they visited a wise elder and asked, "Why do we keep hurting each other when we do not want to?" The elder filled 2 cups with water and placed a spoonful of salt in each. In one cup he stirred wildly. In the other, he let the water settle. "Taste the first one," he said. It was bitter. "Taste the second one after it settles." It was still salty, but gentle enough to swallow. The elder said, "Pain is the salt of human life, but the agitation of the mind determines how bitter the moment becomes. If you keep stirring every hurt with memory, pride, suspicion, and harsh speech, everything becomes unbearable. If you let the mind settle, the same pain can be understood and carried. This is not only wisdom for couples, it is wisdom for anyone who has ever loved. And yet there remains a deep question. If relationship becomes a mirror, what are we supposed to do with what we see? Once you notice your fear, your jealousy, your dependence, your need to control, your habit of attracting unavailable people, what then? Then begins the real work. You do not shame yourself. You do not say, "I am broken." You do not compare your heart to someone else's. You practice. You bring gentle honesty to your patterns. You learn where they were shaped. You stop feeding them blindly. You choose wholesome actions, even when unwholesome impulses are loud. You seek wise friends, wise teachings, and sometimes skilled support. You remember that awakening is a path, not a performance. Many people secretly believe that if they were spiritually mature, they would never feel hurt in love again. This is not realistic. Even awakened compassion does not mean the body becomes stone. It means that when pain arises, wisdom and kindness respond more quickly. The wound may still ache, but it no longer rules the whole house. At this point, let me offer another question for reflection. In love, do you seek mainly to be chosen, or do you seek to become a person who can love with clarity, honesty, and freedom? Both questions shape a life, but only one truly leads toward liberation. There is no shame if your heart still trembles. There is no shame if you still long for closeness, reassurance, tenderness, and shared life. The Buddhist path does not ask you to kill the heart. It asks you to free the heart from ignorance. It asks you to love without building a prison out of love. Let us now turn gently toward the painful area of endings. Few things humble the mind like a breakup, a betrayal, or the slow fading of a connection we once trusted. Endings often feel like proof of failure. But sometimes, an ending is not proof that love was false. Sometimes it is proof that conditions changed. Sometimes it shows that two people did not have the same depth of honesty. Sometimes it reveals that one or both were not ready. Sometimes it exposes values that could not walk together. Sometimes it simply teaches impermanence in a way theory never could. One man kept a shirt in his closet for 3 years after the relationship ended. He could not bring himself to move it. He told himself it was because he still loved her. But as he sat with his grief, he discovered something subtler. The shirt was a doorway to an old version of himself. When she was with him, he felt admired, exciting, important. Letting go of the shirt meant letting go not only of her, but of who he imagined himself to be in her eyes. That is why it hurt so much. When he finally gave it away, he cried. Not only for the lost relationship, but for the self he had built around it. Then a great calm came. He said later, "I thought I was grieving a person. I was also grieving an identity." This is a profound insight. Relationships do not only connect us to another person, they often connect us to a version of ourselves that we are afraid to lose. This is why letting go can feel like dying. But sometimes what dies is not love. It is illusion. It is dependence. It is vanity. It is the dream of being saved from ourselves. After loss, one of the kindest practices is to stop asking only who the other person was and start asking who you became around them. Did you become small? Did you become anxious? Did you become more truthful? Did you become dependent? Did you become more patient? Did you lose your boundaries? Did you grow in honesty? These questions help turn grief into understanding. The Buddha did not promise that everything we love will remain, He showed us instead that clinging to what changes is the root of sorrow. This is not pessimism, it is clarity. And clarity allows a different kind of gratitude. Instead of saying, "It should have lasted forever," we can say, "It was here. It shaped me. It taught me. May I learn well." There is a famous tenderness in mature hearts. It is not naive. It has been broken before. It knows loss. It knows misunderstanding. It knows what it means to wait for someone who does not come, to hope for someone who cannot stay, to be seen partly and missed partly. Yet it does not become bitter. It remains soft because it has learned that bitterness is just another form of clinging. How do we become such a heart? Slowly, by refusing to turn pain into a weapon, by refusing to make suffering our identity, by noticing when the mind wants revenge, self-hatred, or numbness, and instead choosing care, by learning to grieve without building a temple to grief. Perhaps the most radical thing you can do after heartbreak is not to close the heart completely. It is to keep the heart open wisely, open enough to feel, wise enough not to cling, open enough to care, wise enough not to lose yourself, open enough to hope, wise enough not to worship fantasy. There is also another side to this teaching. If love is a mirror, then being in relationship can become an intentional training ground. You can practice mindful listening. You can practice speaking only what is true and useful. You can practice telling the truth early instead of after resentment grows. You can practice not making your partner responsible for every mood. You can practice apologizing without self-defense. You can practice asking for reassurance without accusation. You can practice recognizing when your nervous system is overwhelmed and taking a pause before reacting. This is how love becomes a path, not just an experience. A very simple but powerful practice is to notice what you reach for when your heart is disturbed. Do you reach for your phone? For blame? For escape? For fantasy? For another person's approval? For old stories? For self-criticism? Or do you reach for the breath? For stillness? For truth? For wise speech? For self-respect? The direction you reach in difficult moments shapes the kind of love you can sustain. The Buddha often emphasized that the mind goes where it is trained to go. If it is trained in grasping, it grasps. If it is trained in fear, it trembles. If it is trained in kindness and mindfulness, it remembers a wiser way more easily. This is why daily practice matters even when everything seems fine. We do not prepare the mind only when the storm arrives. We train so that when the storm comes, the mind has somewhere wholesome to stand. Loving yourself in this context does not mean worshiping yourself or becoming self-absorbed. It means not abandoning yourself. It means learning how to stay with your own pain without making another person responsible for removing it instantly. It means speaking kindly to yourself. It means protecting your dignity. It means refusing to trade your peace for crumbs of attention. It means practicing the kind of inner care that allows you to choose relationship from fullness rather than desperation. A tired woman once said, "I keep calling it love, but I notice that every time he leaves, I feel like I disappear." A nun replied, "Then part of your practice is to learn how to remain when someone else steps away. Sit with yourself, walk with yourself, eat with yourself, pray with yourself, Build a home inside that does not collapse whenever another person closes the door. This is not emotional coldness. This is spiritual maturity. There is something very sacred about becoming a person who can remain kind and stable in the presence of uncertainty. That does not mean you never ask questions or express needs. It means you no longer panic every time life fails to reassure you on schedule. You no longer confuse delay with disaster. You no longer treat every discomfort as evidence of rejection. You develop inner room, and as inner room grows, love changes. You stop chasing intensity and start valuing steadiness. You stop being seduced by grand promises and start noticing character. You stop asking only who excites you and start asking who is honest, who is kind, who is capable of repair, who respects truth, who can sit in difficulty without cruelty. This is a beautiful shift from romantic illusion to wise affection. The Buddha praised admirable friendship because the company we keep shapes the mind. This applies in intimate love as well. A wise partner does not need to be perfect, but they should support what is wholesome in you. They should not repeatedly reward your worst impulses. They should not constantly awaken the mind into chaos without any willingness to practice honesty and care. Good company matters. Loving company matters. Ethical company matters. If you are wondering what qualities to look for, begin here. Look for truthfulness. Look for consistency. Look for emotional responsibility. Look for humility. Look for the ability to admit wrong. Look for kindness during stress. Look for how they speak about people who are not present. Look for whether they only love being adored or whether they also know how to serve, listen, and endure discomfort without turning harsh. And ask the same of yourself. Do not wait for the perfect person while refusing to become a more truthful person. Do not demand calm from another if you keep feeding your own chaos. Do not ask for deep safety while remaining deeply dishonest with your own feelings. Love matures when both people become willing students of truth. Sometimes, however, only one person is willing. This is one of the most painful realities to accept. You may be ready to communicate, repair, and grow, while the other person remains defended, avoidant, careless, or trapped in their own unexamined suffering. Buddhism does not ask you to fix another person. Compassion includes recognizing where your effort no longer bears wholesome fruit. A gardener cannot force a seed to sprout if the seed is not ready and the soil is not open. In the same way, you cannot meditate enough, love enough, explain enough, or sacrifice enough to awaken responsibility in someone who keeps refusing it. At some point, wisdom says, I can care without clinging. I can wish you well without staying trapped in your confusion. I can step back without hatred. This kind of letting go is not failure. It is respect for reality. There is another illusion that causes enormous pain. It is the belief that if a relationship ends, all the love was wasted. But nothing deeply seen is wasted. Every time you learn to speak more honestly, that is not wasted. Every time you become aware of a pattern of jealousy or self-abandonment, that is not wasted. Every time you discover a deeper need for inner refuge, that is not wasted. Every time pain humbles the ego and softens the heart, that is not wasted. Loss may still hurt, but meaning can remain. A man once told his teacher, I regret giving her my best years. The teacher asked, did you learn patience? Did you learn how deeply you fear rejection? Did you learn that you use humor to hide hurt? Did you learn that you avoid truth to keep peace? Did you learn that your worth cannot depend on being chosen? The man sat silently. Then he nodded. The teacher said, "Then not all those years were lost. Some years break us. Some years reveal us. Some years begin to free us." This is the quiet power of seeing relationships through Dharma rather than through fantasy. We stop asking only whether something ended well. We ask whether it helped us wake up. Please listen carefully to what comes next. The goal is not to become detached in the cold sense, where you no longer feel deeply. The goal is not to become unreachable. The goal is not to refuse intimacy because impermanence exists. The goal is to love in a way that is warmer and wiser at the same time. To love fully while remembering change. To care deeply without demanding ownership. To tell the truth without violence. To remain open without losing center. If you can do even a little of this, your relationships will begin to transform. And even when they do not transform, you will. Perhaps one of the most helpful reflections is this. Every person you meet is not a magical key designed by destiny to unlock your life. They are a being formed by causes and conditions, just as you are. They come with beauty and blindness, tenderness and fear, generosity and habit. They are not your savior, and you are not theirs. But you may become important companions in each other's learning, for a season or for many years. This understanding removes some of the intoxication and makes room for respect. We stop turning human beings into fantasies. We stop calling obsession spiritual connection. We stop mistaking confusion for cosmic destiny. We begin to ask simpler and wiser questions. Are we honest? Are we kind? Are we capable of repair? Do we bring out more mindfulness or more delusion in each other? Do we help each other become more awake? These questions protect the heart. At the same time, when intense chemistry appears, do not be too quick to trust the first wave. Intensity is not always intimacy. Familiar suffering can feel like home. A person who awakens your oldest wound may feel strangely compelling, not because they are your great destiny, but because the mind recognizes a pattern. This is why discernment matters more than excitement. A woman once said, "Every person I fall for feels electric at first and exhausting later." When she looked carefully, she saw that she was repeatedly drawn to emotional unpredictability because it felt familiar from childhood. Calmness felt boring to her nervous system, even though calmness was exactly what her heart needed. This insight changed her life. She stopped asking why she always attracted the wrong people and began asking why part of her kept feeling at home in instability. This is profound Buddhist work. We stop talking only about who enters our life and start looking at what conditions in us respond so strongly. The path is not self-blame. It is self-understanding. When understanding deepens, the prayer of the heart changes. Instead of, "Please let this person never leave me," the heart begins to pray, "May I meet love with wisdom." Instead of, "Please make them become who I need," the heart begins to pray, "May I see clearly what is wholesome and what is not." Instead of, "Please protect me from all pain," the heart begins to pray, "May I not waste pain when it comes." This is a very different kind of love. It is humbler. It is steadier. It bows to truth, and truth though sometimes sharp, is compassionate. There may come a time in your life when you meet someone and the connection is simple, not dramatic, not addictive, not full of constant testing, just sincere. If that happens, do not overlook it because it lacks chaos. Peace may feel unfamiliar at first, but peace is not emptiness. Peace is spaciousness. Peace is what allows love to breathe. There is a beautiful maturity in saying, I no longer want a love that keeps me confused. I no longer mistake emotional turbulence for depth. I no longer want to abandon myself to keep someone near. I want the kind of love that can survive truth. Truth is what makes love safe. Near the end of this reflection, let us return to the central insight. The greatest value of love is not simply that you meet the right person. It is that the trembling of the heart reveals the mind. Through joy, you see attachment to pleasure. Through fear, you see clinging to security. Through jealousy, you see comparison and lack. Through conflict, you see pride and defensiveness. Through waiting, you see impatience. Through loss, you see impermanence. Through honest care, you taste compassion. Through restraint, you taste wisdom. In this way, relationship becomes a temple with no walls. Daily life becomes the sermon, the text message, the silence, the disagreement, the apology, the longing, the ending, the reunion, the ordinary meal, the difficult truth, the tears in the car, the laughter in the kitchen, the walk after conflict, the choice to soften instead of attack, the courage to leave when truth is repeatedly broken. All of it becomes part of practice. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Love is not meant to make you smaller. It is not meant to erase your dignity. It is not meant to reward your deepest fear. It is not meant to keep you spiritually asleep. At its healthiest, love reveals, refines, and humbles the heart. It invites growth. It invites truth. It invites responsibility. It invites freedom. And if you are alone right now, do not think this teaching excludes you. Solitude can also be a mirror. The ache for partnership can reveal longing. The envy of others can reveal comparison. The fear of never being chosen can reveal an old wound. Your present season, whatever it is, can become part of the path. Sit with your own heart. Learn its language. Learn where it is tender. Learn where it becomes demanding. Learn where it runs, where it clings, where it hides, where it dramatizes, where it needs kindness. The one who can sit with their own heart gently is less likely to turn another person into medicine for everything unresolved. If you have found comfort in this teaching, you may like or subscribe in your own quiet way, not for noise, not for trend, but to help keep alive a small place where hearts can return when love becomes confusion and the mind needs a clearer lamp. Let us close slowly with a final story. A traveler once came to a monastery carrying a cracked mirror wrapped in cloth. He told the abbot, "This mirror belonged to the woman I loved. When she left, I kept it because it was the last thing that reflected her face in my home." The abbot unwrapped it and looked carefully. Then he said, "Perhaps you have carried this for so long because you believe it still reflects her. But maybe what it has been reflecting all this time is you." The traveler was silent. The abbot continued, "If a relationship breaks your image of yourself, Do not be too quick to curse the break. Sometimes a cracked mirror saves us from worshiping a false face. Sometimes what shatters is not love, but illusion. If you are brave, you will not only ask who left, you will ask what in you is now asking to awaken. The traveler began to cry. He had spent years telling the story of being left. That night, for the first time, he began telling the story of being revealed. May we all learn this deeper art. When love brings joy, may we receive it with gratitude and not with possession. When love brings pain, may we meet it with mindfulness and not with blindness. When love ends, may we grieve honestly and still remain open to wisdom. When love stays, may we practice truth, patience, and gentleness, so that closeness becomes a field of awakening rather than another place of sleep. May you love without losing yourself. May you heal without hardening. May you see the mind clearly when the heart trembles. May you learn the difference between warmth and clinging, between devotion and control, between chemistry and wisdom, between loneliness and genuine love. And may every relationship in your life, whether brief or lasting, become part of your path toward a freer and more compassionate heart. When you finally meet yourself clearly, not the wounded mask, not the frightened story, not the hungry identity begging to be chosen, but the deeper awareness beneath all that movement, you may discover something astonishing. Love was never meant only to come from another person. The deepest refuge was waiting quietly within the very heart that kept searching. And from that place, you can love more truly than before. There are some very specific forms of suffering that appear again and again in love. And if we do not understand them, they quietly take over the whole relationship. One of the strongest is jealousy. Jealousy is rarely only about the present moment. It often carries comparison, fear of replacement, fear of humiliation, and a painful belief that someone else's beauty or value threatens our own. The Buddha pointed again and again toward the poisons of greed, aversion, and delusion. Jealousy contains all three. It grasps for exclusivity. It resents what seems to threaten it. And it believes a dangerous story, that another person's interest elsewhere would somehow erase our worth. A woman once said, "I know he has done nothing wrong. Yet when I see him laughing with someone else, I feel a fire that embarrasses me. I become cold. I become suspicious. I imagine things that may not be true. I hate this part of myself." A wise lay teacher replied, "Do not begin by hating the jealousy. Hatred added to jealousy only becomes more suffering. Begin by studying it. What is the jealousy trying to protect? What does it fear would happen if another person were loved, praised, or chosen?" The woman sat quietly and then whispered, "It fears I will disappear." That answer is profound. Many of our strongest reactions in love come from the old terror of disappearance. If I am not the favorite, I am nothing. If I am not chosen, I vanish. If I am not special, I am worthless. This is not love speaking. This is the frightened self begging to survive through comparison. How do we practice with jealousy? First, by admitting it honestly, not dressing it in noble language, not pretending it is intuition when it is mostly fear, not turning it into accusation before we have examined it. Then by feeling it in the body. Jealousy often lives as heat, tightening, restlessness, obsessing, scanning. Then by asking, What story is the mind adding? What am I imagining? What am I making this mean about me? And then by remembering that another person's light does not take away our own. In Buddhist practice, we cultivate mudita, appreciative joy, the ability to rejoice in goodness without feeling diminished. Mudita may sound almost impossible when the heart is insecure, but it is powerful medicine. It tells the mind, love is not a small cup that empties when shared. Worth is not a prize handed to only one person. Another person's beauty does not prove my deficiency. Another person's success does not destroy my path. Another person's friendship with the one I love does not automatically mean I am being erased. Of course, discernment still matters. If there is actual betrayal, dishonesty, secrecy, or repeated violation of trust, then we are not dealing only with inner jealousy. We are dealing with conduct. This is why mindfulness and wisdom must walk together. We neither deny the mind nor ignore reality. Another common suffering is the need for constant reassurance. This is one of the hidden burdens many relationships carry. One person becomes the manager of the other person's emotional weather. They must text enough, say enough, prove enough, soothe enough. At first, it can look like devotion. Over time, it becomes exhausting. The one who needs reassurance feels never fully settled. The one who gives it feels they are filling a bowl with no bottom. A man once confessed, "I ask her all the time if she still loves me. She says yes, but the relief only lasts a little while. Then I need to hear it again." The teacher answered, "Because the problem is not only a lack of words. The problem is that your mind has made reassurance its drug. When the effect fades, the craving returns. If you do not learn how to calm your own fear, no amount of love from another person will ever feel like enough." This is deeply relevant for modern life. We live in a world of instant communication, but the mind has become less patient, not more. We can message across continents in seconds, yet 1 hour of silence can feel unbearable. The phone has become both bridge and battlefield. It delivers connection, but it also delivers endless opportunities for projection. Seen, but not answered. Online, but quiet. Warm last night, distant this morning. So the mind runs wild. If you want peace in love, you must refuse to let technology train your nervous system into constant insecurity. Learn how to put the phone down. Learn how to wait without imagining disaster. Learn how to breathe through uncertainty. Learn how not to treat every digital delay as a spiritual crisis. A helpful reflection is this: before I react to silence, do I know the facts, or am I feeding a story? Before I demand reassurance, have I sat with my fear for at least a few breaths? Before I accuse, have I asked with kindness? Before I panic, have I remembered impermanence, complexity, and the ordinary burdens of another person's life? Sometimes the kindest thing you can offer a relationship is not another message, but a steadier mind. Let us now consider another difficult territory: control. Many people do not realize how often they try to control in the name of love. They manage tone, time, friendships, clothing, schedule, attention, emotional display, and private space. They say it is because they care. Sometimes care is present, but often control is fear, dressed in the language of intimacy. Control grows where trust is weak and where the self feels threatened. It says, If I can just shape this person enough, I will feel safe. But true safety does not grow from controlling another consciousness. It grows from truth, mutual respect, trustworthy behavior, and inner groundedness. Without these, control only produces resistance, resentment, and secret distance. One woman said, "I only check his location because I worry. I only question him because I love him." But when she looked honestly, she saw that her questions were not opening relationship. They were shrinking it. She was not building trust. She was trying to replace trust with surveillance. That never works for long. The Buddha's path always brings us back to ethical means. A wholesome end cannot be reached by unwholesome methods. Peace cannot be built through domination. Love cannot be deepened through manipulation. Security cannot be established by violating another person's dignity. If fear is present, let fear be acknowledged. If a need exists, let it be spoken clearly. If a boundary is required, let it be established honestly. But let us stop calling control by beautiful names. This brings us naturally to the subject of boundaries. Some people hear spiritual teachings and become confused. They think compassion means endless access. They think patience means staying available to chaos. They think forgiveness means repeated exposure to the same harm. They think loving deeply means never saying no. But the Buddha's teaching supports wisdom, and wisdom knows that conditions matter. A fence around a garden is not hatred of the world. It is protection for what is trying to grow. In the same way, boundaries are not punishment when they are rooted in clarity. They are forms of care. They preserve dignity. They protect mental stability. They create the conditions in which trust can either grow honestly or reveal that it will not grow at all. You may need a boundary with a person who keeps speaking cruelly when angry. You may need a boundary with someone who disappears whenever accountability appears. You may need a boundary with someone who only remembers your value when they are lonely. You may need a boundary with your own habits, like late-night messaging, emotional overexposure, or returning again and again to what repeatedly breaks you. Boundaries become especially powerful when they are expressed without vengeance. I care for you, but I cannot continue like this. I am open to repair, but not to repeated disrespect. I need honesty if this is to continue. I am stepping back, not because I hate you, but because this pattern is not wholesome for either of us. Such words are grounded, adult, and deeply aligned with Dharma. Another form of suffering in love is idealization. It happens when we stop seeing a person and start seeing our salvation. We make them wiser than they are, kinder than they are, stronger than they are, more available than they are. We ignore inconsistency because hope is intoxicating. We excuse dishonesty because chemistry is strong. We call confusion mystery. We call mixed signals depth. We call emotional unavailability complexity. We call our own denial loyalty. Idealization always collapses eventually. Reality is merciful that way. The person turns out to be ordinary, inconsistent, scared, selfish, distracted, immature, or simply not capable of meeting us. Then the mind says, I was deceived. But often part of the pain is that we deceived ourselves. We saw what we needed to see in order to keep the story alive. The antidote is not cynicism. It is sober affection. See the person as they are. Notice patterns, not only promises. Notice how they act when they do not feel romantic. Notice how they handle discomfort. Notice how they respond when you express hurt. Notice whether their kindness survives inconvenience. Notice whether their words and actions remain aligned over time. This is not unromantic. It is wise. It is one of the most loving things you can do for your future self. There is also a quiet suffering that many people carry without naming it. It is the habit of self-abandonment in love. This happens when the desire to keep closeness becomes stronger than the desire to remain truthful. A person laughs when they are hurt, stays silent when they need to speak, agrees when they inwardly disagree, accepts less than they need, pretends not to mind, over-explains, over-gives, over-accommodates, and slowly disappears. At first, self-abandonment can look like generosity. Later, it feels like resentment. The relationship may continue, but the soul becomes tired. You can feel it in the body. The smile becomes effortful. The chest feels heavy. Small things trigger tears. The person says, "I do not know what is wrong." But deep down, they know. They have been leaving themselves little by little to avoid losing someone else. One woman said, "I thought I was being loving, but really, I was negotiating against myself. I made my needs tiny so I would be easy to keep." This insight broke her open, but it also freed her. She finally understood that a love requiring constant self-betrayal is too expensive, no matter how strong the emotion feels. In Buddhist practice, truthfulness begins at home. If you cannot tell the truth to yourself, you will struggle to tell it kindly to another. Ask yourself often, what am I pretending not to know? What am I minimizing? What do I keep calling patience that is actually fear? What do I keep calling loyalty that is actually attachment? The more truth enters the heart, the less dramatic life may become, but the more peaceful it becomes. Another important subject is forgiveness. People either rush toward forgiveness too fast or refuse it completely. Both extremes create suffering. Forgiveness is not pretending something did not hurt. It is not immediate trust. It is not reunion by force. And it is not forgetting. In the Buddhist sense, forgiveness is often the gradual release of the wish to keep burning in resentment. It is saying, "I do not want to keep drinking this poison." But forgiveness has its own timing. Sometimes the first step is not forgiveness, but protection. Sometimes the first step is grief. Sometimes the first step is naming what happened clearly. Sometimes the first step is anger that has finally become conscious after years of silence. Wisdom honors sequence. A man once said, "I am trying to forgive her, but every time I think of what happened, my chest burns." A monk replied, "Then do not force the final fruit before the soil is ready. Begin with this. May I not add new hatred to old pain. May I understand my suffering. May I not become what hurt me." That is already a noble beginning. This is deeply important. You do not need to force tender feelings towards someone who harmed you, but you can gradually stop making hatred your home. You can release the need to replay the wound every day. You can choose not to let another person's ignorance define the atmosphere of your whole life. And sometimes, forgiveness also means forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for staying too long, for not seeing sooner, for wanting what was not healthy, for repeating old patterns, for believing what was convenient to believe. Self-forgiveness does not remove responsibility. It removes the cruelty that prevents learning. Let us speak now about loneliness, because many relationship choices are made under its pressure. Loneliness can be so intense that almost any connection feels meaningful. The mind says, "At least someone is here. At least I matter to somebody. At least I am not alone tonight." Under that pressure, standards collapse, boundaries blur. We confuse attention with care and availability with suitability. The Buddha's path offers something precious here. It teaches us how to be alone without becoming empty. Solitude is not the same as rejection. Silence is not the same as worthlessness. Being without a partner is not proof that life has forgotten you. These are painful illusions the culture repeats. But Dharma can undo them. Sit quietly enough, and you may discover that loneliness has layers. There is the simple wish for companionship, which is human and tender. Then there is the deeper wound that says, "If no one chooses me, I am nothing." The first can be held with warmth. The second needs healing. If we do not distinguish them, we keep entering relationships from the wrong hunger. A lay practitioner once chose to spend one evening each week in complete stillness. No dating apps, no messaging, no distraction. Just tea, a candle, breathing, journaling, and honest reflection. At first, it was unbearable. She wanted noise, validation, interruption. But over months, something changed. The evenings became sacred. She said, "I still want love, but I no longer want to use another person to run away from my own company." That is a beautiful transformation. You do not need to become a renunciant to learn from solitude. You only need moments when you stop treating your own heart as a room to escape. Another form of practice in love is learning how to receive care. This sounds simple, but for many people it is difficult. They know how to give, but receiving feels unsafe. They doubt praise. They minimize kindness. They become suspicious when treated well. Why? Because old suffering made familiarity out of struggle. Ease feels undeserved or unstable. So when healthy affection appears, they pull away. One man said, "When someone is kind to me, I feel restless. I start looking for what is wrong." The teacher asked, "What kind of love felt normal in your early life?" He answered, "Love that had to be earned. Love that could disappear. Love that came with criticism." The teacher nodded. Then naturally, healthy love may feel unfamiliar. Do not mistake unfamiliar for false. Sometimes your nervous system is afraid not because the moment is dangerous, but because it is peaceful. This insight matters for those who keep choosing intensity over steadiness. Sometimes the heart must be educated into receiving goodness. A practical way to do that is to stay present when something wholesome happens. If someone listens well, notice it. If someone keeps a promise, notice it. If someone responds with respect during difficulty, notice it. Let healthy experiences register. The mind often records pain quickly and dismisses goodness quickly. Mindfulness helps rebalance that. At this stage, it may be helpful to ask another question. In love, what feels more familiar to you? Peace or unpredictability? And is what feels familiar actually what is good for the heart? Sit with that gently. Let us turn now toward the idea of repair. Every healthy relationship, whether romantic or otherwise, depends not on never hurting each other, but on learning how to repair. Repair requires humility. It requires listening without preparing your defense. It requires naming the wound without exaggeration. It requires the willingness to say, "I see the effect my action had, even if I did not intend it." It requires the willingness to hear, "I know you are hurt, and I want to understand." Without repair, closeness becomes a collection of unhealed moments. Old injuries pile up, resentment hardens. Then one day, the final argument seems bigger than the issue at hand, because it is carrying many older voices. A simple repair practice can change a relationship. One person speaks while the other only reflects back what they heard. Then they switch. No interruption, no correction until the reflection is complete. It sounds almost too simple, but many people have never felt truly heard. When understanding enters, the nervous system softens. The mind becomes less defensive. Solutions become possible. Repair also means recognizing when not to continue a conversation. If both people are flooded, truth will not land. Sometimes repair begins with a pause, a walk, a glass of water, a few minutes of breathing, and a promise to return when the fire has lowered. Stepping away skillfully is not avoidance, it is timing. The Buddha's teachings on effort are useful here. Why effort means preventing unwholesome states from arising when possible, abandoning them when they have arisen, cultivating wholesome states, and sustaining them. Imagine using this in relationship. Prevent harsh speech by pausing early. Abandon suspicion by examining it before it spreads. Cultivate appreciation intentionally. Sustain kindness in ordinary moments, not only after damage has been done. This is how spiritual practice enters the kitchen, the bedroom, the street, the phone call, the tired evening, the family gathering, the difficult silence. It becomes real. Let us speak about family conditioning, because many relationship struggles are inherited. We learn how to attach, how to argue, how to apologize, how to hide, how to seek closeness, and how to fear loss long before romance begins. Some were raised with warmth and repair, others with criticism and unpredictability, others with emotional absence, others with over-control. Then later we call our reactions personality, but often they are learned survival strategies. If your home taught you that love must be earned, you may become a performer in relationships. If your home taught you that closeness is dangerous, you may pull away when intimacy deepens. If your home taught you that anger is explosive, you may fear honest conflict. If your home taught you that silence means punishment, every pause may feel threatening. Understanding this is not about blaming parents forever. It is about seeing conditions clearly so that freedom becomes possible. A woman once said, "I used to believe I was just too sensitive, but then I realized that in my childhood, one small shift in the room could mean danger. Of course, I became alert to tone and distance." Her insight changed how she treated herself. She stopped shaming her nervous system and started training it gently. This is compassion in practice. The Buddha's path never asks us to hate our conditioning. It asks us to understand it, so we no longer serve it blindly. This understanding can also soften how we see others. The person who withdraws may have learned that vulnerability is unsafe. The person who clings may have learned that love disappears without warning. The person who becomes defensive may have grown up around blame. This does not excuse harm. but it adds compassion without removing accountability. Healthy love balances compassion and responsibility. We recognize the pain behind behavior, but we do not use that recognition to justify endless repetition of harm. We can say, "I understand where this may come from, and I still need something different if this is to continue." That sentence contains great wisdom. There is also a very beautiful practice called appreciation. Many relationships fail, not only because of conflict, but because of forgetfulness. People stop noticing what is good. The mind becomes trained to scan for lack. This is understandable, especially if fear is active. But appreciation is medicine. It reminds the heart that goodness is present too. Try a simple practice. Each day, name one thing you appreciate in the person you love, and one thing you appreciate in yourself for how you showed up that day. Appreciation does not erase problems. It prevents the mind from becoming blind to nourishment. If the relationship has ended, this practice can still help. Name one thing the relationship taught you, and one strength that revealed itself in you through surviving it. In this way, even memory becomes less poisonous. And if you are between relationships, appreciate the ways life is still holding you. The friend who checks on you, the body that continues breathing, the sunrise that asks nothing of you, the meal you prepared with care, the book that found you at the right time, the capacity to begin again. Gratitude stabilizes the mind. It may seem strange to speak of gratitude when discussing heartbreak and attachment, yet gratitude is one of the safest medicines for the grasping mind. It says, "I do not need to own everything to honor what was given." It says, "I can appreciate without possessing." This is deeply freeing. As we continue, let us remember that the Buddhist path is not anti-love. It is anti-delusion. It does not ask us to avoid relationship. It asks us not to sleep inside relationship. It asks us not to make a god out of another person. It asks us not to hand over the keys of our peace to every passing mood, every delayed answer, every fear-based story, every old wound seeking confirmation. The awakened heart can love very deeply, perhaps more deeply than the grasping heart, because it does not spend all its energy trying to secure itself. It has room for tenderness, for humor, for patience, for quiet service, for listening, for repair, for reverence, for truth. And if one day love leaves, the awakened heart grieves, but it does not collapse into nothing. It bows, it learns, it releases, and it continues the path. This may be one of the most beautiful forms of strength in the world. Let us now make the teaching even more practical. What do you do in the very moment the heart is triggered? What do you do when the body shakes, the mind races, and all your wisdom feels far away? A teaching that cannot enter those moments remains only an idea. The first practice is to delay reaction. Not truth, not communication forever, just reaction. Create a sacred pause. 1 minute, 3 breaths, a walk around the room, hands under cool water, a cup of tea held with full attention. The mind in pain always wants speed. It wants to text now, accuse now, explain now, threaten now, beg now, leave now, return now. But speed and wisdom rarely arrive together. The pause is not weakness. The pause is dignity. It is the bridge between impulse and choice. During that pause, ask only simple questions. What am I feeling? Where do I feel it in the body? What story is the mind telling? What do I want to do right now? And what action will I respect tomorrow? This last question is powerful. What action will I respect tomorrow? It can save relationships, and it can save self-respect. The second practice is to distinguish need from demand. There is nothing wrong with having needs. We all need honesty, tenderness, care, communication, and respect. The suffering begins when the mind turns need into demand, and demand into identity. I need reassurance becomes, you must reassure me exactly when and how I want, or I will collapse. I need clarity becomes, you must remove all uncertainty from my life. I need care becomes, you must center me at all times. A need can be spoken with humility. A demand is usually driven by fear. Learn the language of clean request. I feel unsettled, and I would appreciate some clarity. I value this relationship, and I need honesty to feel safe in it. When long silence happens, my mind gets activated. Can we talk about a way of communicating that feels respectful to both of us? These forms of speech create possibility. They do not guarantee the outcome, but they honor the path. The third practice is to return to the body. Much relational suffering is amplified because we try to solve everything at the level of thought, while the body is in full alarm. The body needs attention. Relax the jaw. Unclench the hands. Feel the feet touching the ground. Lengthen the exhale. Notice the shoulders. Speak slower than the urge tells you to. Sit down if you can. When the body feels a little safer, the mind becomes less extreme. The fourth practice is to tell the truth in layers, not explosions. Sometimes people remain silent for a long time, and then speak only when resentment has become wildfire. Instead, learn small, honest truths. That comment hurt me. I felt dismissed just now. I need a little time before I answer. I do not think I can agree to that. I am noticing fear in myself, and I want to speak carefully. Small truths prevent large ruptures. The fifth practice is to know when the real conversation is not with the other person, but with your own mind. There are moments when no amount of external reassurance will solve what is happening. If the suffering is being generated mainly by comparison, memory, fantasy, or unprocessed fear, then the more urgent conversation is inward. Sit down, journal, pray, meditate, walk in silence. Ask the deeper question. What am I really asking this person to carry for me right now? Sometimes the answer is startling. I am asking them to prove that I am lovable. I am asking them to heal my childhood. I am asking them to remove all uncertainty from life. I am asking them to tell me I will never be left. Once we see this, tenderness for ourselves can begin, and our relationship with the other becomes less burdened. Another valuable practice is to become very careful with the stories you tell about love. Many hearts are not only wounded by their relationships, they are wounded by the stories they learned about what love is supposed to look like. Some were taught that true love should be effortless. Some were taught that jealousy proves passion. Some were taught that suffering proves loyalty. Some were taught that if someone really loves you, they should know your needs without communication. Some were taught that being chosen by another makes life meaningful. Buddhist wisdom loosens the grip of these stories. It asks, what actually reduces suffering? What actually supports truth and compassion? What actually leads to peace? Let these questions become stronger than cultural fantasy. A wholesome relationship may not look dramatic from the outside. It may look ordinary. Two people keeping their word. Two people speaking honestly. Two people learning each other's wounds without using them as weapons. Two people making room for silence without panic. Two people apologizing without humiliation. Two people allowing each other to be human. This is not ordinary in the lesser sense. It is quietly sacred. At this point, someone may ask, but what about passion? Are we supposed to become calm, careful, and never intensely alive? Not at all. The Dharma does not erase aliveness. It purifies it. It allows joy without addiction, intimacy without possession, attraction without delusion, and devotion without self-erasure. It lets passion ripen into something trustworthy. Wildfire is intense, but it destroys quickly. A steady lamp may look less dramatic, but it gives light through the night. Ask yourself which one you truly want. Let us also reflect on how we behave when we are the one who causes pain. It is easy to use spiritual language when we are the hurt one, harder when we are the one who forgot, withdrew, spoke sharply, acted carelessly, broke trust, or avoided truth. But the Dharma must apply there too. If you discover that you have hurt someone, begin with honesty. Do not rush to explain before you have listened. Do not protect your image more than the relationship. Do not say, "I am sorry you feel that way," when what is needed is, "I see what I did, and I understand it caused pain." Accountability is love. Accountability is maturity. Accountability is non-harming made visible. A woman told her teacher, "My habit is to become cold when I feel overwhelmed. I do not mean to punish anyone, but I know it hurts the people close to me." The teacher replied, "Then your practice is to become responsible for the silence you create. Do not wait until your withdrawal has become a wall. Name your state early. Say, I am overwhelmed and I need a little time, but I am not abandoning this conversation." That one sentence can spare another person hours of fear. This is how awareness becomes compassion in action. Another powerful practice is learning how to bless instead of possess. This may be one of the most difficult and beautiful trainings of the heart. To bless means we want what is truly good, not only what keeps us comfortable. It means that even in love, we care about the other person's well-being, ethics, and path, not only their usefulness to our emotional needs. It means we do not delight in keeping them small so they remain dependent. We do not secretly fear their growth because it might change the relationship. We do not call it love when we resist what is good for them simply because it unsettles us. Imagine loving in this way. I want your deepest well-being, even as I remain honest about my own needs. I want what is wholesome for you, not just what soothes me. If our paths continue together, may we help each other grow. If they separate, may I still not poison your name out of wounded pride. This is noble love. Not easy, but noble. There is a touching story of a couple who had been married for many years. In old age, the wife became forgetful. Some days, she repeated the same question 10 times. Some days, she accused her husband of things he had not done because memory no longer served her clearly. The husband cared for her with immense patience. A visitor asked, How do you stay so gentle when she no longer remembers so much? He answered, "She may forget my name, but I do not want to forget my vows. She taught me love in youth. Now age is teaching me another form of love." This story reveals a dimension of love often hidden by modern romance. Love is not only chemistry. It is not only compatibility. It is also care when pleasure has faded, patience when ease is gone, and tenderness in the face of impermanence. Such love is deeply aligned with the Buddha's path because it knows change and remains kind anyway. At the same time, it is important not to use noble stories to pressure ourselves into staying in every painful situation. There is a difference between loving through difficulty and remaining in what repeatedly destroys safety and truth. Wisdom knows the difference. Some relationships ask for more patience, others ask for departure. There is no single formula. That is why mindfulness and ethical clarity are so essential. When uncertain, ask these questions. Is this relationship helping me become more honest, more grounded, more compassionate, more awake? Or am I becoming more anxious, more hidden, more resentful, more diminished, more confused? Is there mutual willingness to repair? Is truth possible here? Is respect alive here? Am I staying from love, from fear, from habit, or from the inability to imagine another life? These questions do not answer everything at once, but they clear some fog. The Buddha often pointed to the importance of admirable friendship because our companions influence our mind. In intimate partnership, this becomes even more potent. The person closest to you can either strengthen mindfulness or strengthen delusion. They can support your ethical life or steadily pull you away from it. They can encourage your practice or mock it. They can help your nervous system settle or keep it in chronic alarm. So choose carefully. And if you have already chosen, observe honestly. Love does not excuse blindness. Another hidden teacher in relationships is disappointment. We often think disappointment means something has gone wrong, but disappointment simply means an image has collided with reality. That collision can hurt, but it can also mature us. Every disappointment asks, what was I expecting? Was it spoken or merely imagined? Was it realistic? Was it rooted in need, fantasy, entitlement, or fear? What can I learn here without becoming cynical? Disappointment can ripen the heart if it leads to clearer seeing. It can destroy the heart if it hardens into permanent distrust. The difference lies in how we hold it. A man expected his partner to always understand when he was stressed, when she sometimes needed comfort too. He felt irritated and silently accused her of failing. Only later did he see that he had unconsciously assigned her the role of emotional caretaker. He was disappointed, not because she had betrayed him, but because she had refused a role he had never clearly named. His disappointment became wisdom when he saw his own hidden expectation. How many times do we suffer, not from what was promised, but from what we secretly assumed? This is why clear agreements matter. Speak about values. Speak about communication. Speak about exclusivity or openness. Speak about family, money, time, care, responsibilities, and conflict style. Speak before pain grows large. Silence around important matters does not create peace. It creates delayed confusion. And yet, even with communication, no relationship escapes vulnerability. To love is to become vulnerable. There is no way around this. If you want a life where no one can hurt you, you may protect yourself into loneliness. If you open, you risk disappointment. The Dharma does not remove risk. It teaches us how not to become enslaved by it. A vulnerable heart is not a weak heart. A vulnerable heart that is also mindful is one of the strongest things in the world. It can feel deeply without losing discernment. It can cry without becoming helpless. It can say, "I care for you, and I also care for truth." It can remain soft and still walk away when necessary. It can let love in without throwing away wisdom. There is a practice I want to offer for moments of relational confusion. Sit quietly and imagine the person before you. Then ask your heart 3 questions. What do I genuinely appreciate here? What causes suffering here? What would love, guided by wisdom, do next? Do not answer quickly. Let the body participate. Let honesty come slowly. Sometimes the answer will be to stay and practice. Sometimes it will be to speak a difficult truth. Sometimes it will be to step back. Sometimes it will be simply to wait until your mind is clearer. In long relationships, another challenge appears: taking each other for granted. The extraordinary becomes ordinary. The mind adapts quickly. What once felt precious starts to feel expected. Then appreciation fades, and small irritations fill the space. This is why gratitude and conscious attention are not luxuries. They are maintenance for the heart. Look again at the one you love. Look as if you had to explain their value to someone who had never met them. What tenderness do they carry? What burdens do they hold? What ordinary acts of care do you no longer notice? What pain in them deserves more gentleness? What goodness in them deserves more thanks? Attention is one of the purest forms of love. Likewise, if you are alone, look again at your own life. What strengths have helped you survive? What beauty remains even in uncertainty? What qualities in you are quietly growing because no relationship is currently distracting you from yourself? Solitude also has gifts. As this teaching becomes longer and deeper, let us slow down and touch a final set of truths. First, not every relationship is meant to stay, but every relationship can reveal something. Second, emotional pain does not always mean the relationship is wrong, but repeated dishonesty and disrespect are serious signs. Third, inner work is essential, but inner work should not become an excuse for tolerating harm. Fourth, the goal is not to become less human, but more conscious. Fifth, the person who learns to remain present with their own heart becomes capable of a calmer and more generous love. Sixth, the deepest question is not only whether someone loves you, but whether you are meeting love with truth. Seventh, love becomes sacred when it invites both tenderness and awakening. Eighth, if a relationship asks you to betray your conscience, your dignity, or your sanity, it is not a path to freedom. Ninth, the heart can heal. 10th, the path continues whether love comes, stays, changes, or leaves. Let me tell you one last everyday story before we begin to close. A woman and a man had been together for several years. They loved each other, but they often fought in circles. One evening, after another painful argument, they sat apart in exhausted silence. Instead of defending himself, the man finally said, "I think I keep trying to win because I am afraid that if I am wrong, I will be unlovable." The woman began to cry and answered, I think I keep talking louder because I am afraid that if I am not heard immediately, I will disappear.
Suddenly, the argument changed. It was no longer two enemies fighting over surface issues. It was two frightened hearts revealing their deeper fear. Nothing magical happened in that instant. They still had patterns. They still needed work. But from that night onward, when conflict rose, they learned to ask, "What fear is under this?" That question saved them many times. Try it in your own life. Beneath anger may be hurt. Beneath control may be fear. Beneath jealousy may be grief. Beneath withdrawal may be shame. Beneath clinging may be loneliness. Beneath pride may be a trembling wish to be loved. If we only fight the surface, we keep repeating the pattern. If we learn to listen deeper, wisdom enters. And yet remember, understanding the fear under behavior does not mean all behavior becomes acceptable. Insight must walk with ethics. Tenderness must walk with truth. As we near the end, I want to speak directly to the heart that still hopes for a great love. Do not be ashamed of that hope. Do not kill it in the name of wisdom. Just refine it. Hope not merely for someone who makes you feel intensely alive. Hope for someone in whose presence truth can breathe. Hope for someone who does not feed your worst confusion. Hope for someone who can stand in difficulty without becoming cruel. Hope for someone who respects your humanity and is willing to practice with you. And become such a person yourself. The Buddha's path does not promise a perfect romance. It offers something better. It offers a way to meet every form of love with more awareness, to cherish what is good without clinging, to feel pain without becoming bitterness, to speak truth without hatred, to leave when needed without revenge, to stay when wise without losing oneself, to grieve endings without worshiping them, to receive new beginnings without fantasy. If you can live this way, then love no longer controls your destiny. It becomes part of your awakening. May your heart become brave enough to be honest, soft enough to remain compassionate, clear enough to see what is wholesome, and steady enough not to confuse intensity with truth. May the loves that enter your life teach you well. May the loves that leave your life leave behind wisdom, not poison. May the love that stays grow in patience, humility, and freedom. And may the refuge you seek in another slowly awaken within your own mindful heart.